This is a new component that we've just shipped, referred to as the Rich Text Repeater. And as an example for this discussion, I'm going to use a simple FAQ section here. You can see typically in Webflow, when you build a FAQ section, you're going to have your questions appearing with the ability to click and open and close answers, and usually some kind of nice animation or interaction in the corner here. It's going to create a nice fluid experience for your users. The challenge becomes when you're dealing with a collection page. If this is a collection page, then the question becomes, where are the facts stored? There isn't really an intrinsic easy way in the current CMS as of January 2026 to navigate and to manage that content. Now, one common approach is to create a second table. You might call it facts, and you might have a title, and you might have text or a rich text content area. And you would simply create all of your facts there. Then in your main collection page, in your main collection item, you would create a multi-ref pointing to those. However, for the end user client who's not that familiar with Webflow, navigating that can be somewhat of a pain. Creating a new item means they have to go to one table to do that. To create those items, if they want to reorder these facts, that becomes a problem because multi-ref fields do not currently allow any kind of drag and drop reordering interface. So there are just a number of different inconveniences that make this a bit tricky. I wanted to see if there was a better way. And this started as a prototype project, but it's actually going to go into production very quickly on this site because it's working exceptionally well. And the idea is that instead of trying to source the data externally from another collection through a multi-ref, we're sourcing it directly from a rich text field. Each FAQ has a heading, which represents the question, and then some content, which represents the body or the content of that fact. The next heading delineates the next fact. So I can have as many as I want in one rich text element. I can get very creative with the types of content I want. Paragraphs, block quotes, code blocks, images, video, lists, pretty much anything that you want, you can simply use in that rich text blocks, and it will be pulled in here. Now, the reason it's called the Rich Text Repeater is that it's using the rich text content as a data source, parsing it, and then merging it into a template that you control. And as a result, you get a huge amount of versatility in how it presents. Now, the mechanics will make this clear, so let's jump over to the project to have a look at how this is implemented. So here we have a rich text repeater element. This is a code component. It's free for use, coming from Sygnal Marketplace. You can simply install the Sygnal layout library, and this is one of the components in it. You can see it's got a couple of different attributes here, a couple of different properties, including the rich text source. In this case, I have it bound to a CMS field, but you could simply type the rich text manually if you want to. It's got a couple of slots. I'll go into detail on those in a minute. It has a parsing rule. Now, in this case, the parsing of the rich text, there's only one mode, and that is to delineate the items at headings and to grab the rich text between them. You end up with two parts of content for each item, a heading and a rich text content, and then together they are an item. There are a couple of other features here. Debugging, this is a feature that we implement in all of our code components. This controls, to some degree, what appears on the screen here in terms of additional useful information, but also whether it does console logging so that you can do debugging and analysis there in the published page. And then a new feature, this is a new experiment which worked really well, which is an option to reset interactions. In this case, IX2 is what we currently support after the content has merged. The reason is the way that this code component works, the template merge and the rich text acquisition have to occur client side. And that means in JavaScript. And to prevent any possible sync issues, we want to make sure, since we're creating new elements dynamically, that they get wired up properly. Now, the interactions feature, I'll show you a little bit more on that later, but it supports class triggered interactions, because these items can all be given a class that triggers. When we reset interactions, it can then bind to these items, and then they all end up working here in the publish page very, very conveniently. And we'll add support for interactions 3 as soon as we know what's involved in binding them and have some prototype FAQs or accordion type layouts in order to experiment with. Back to the component design. You can see that there are 2 different slots here, and slots only accept components. So we've created both of these as components. The first slot is a template slot. This describes the individual item. The item is this template here. Now I can open that up and I can go into it. I can look at the content. I can make any modifications I want. Here I've got a rich text element. Here I've got the heading element. These elements are bound using a custom attribute. So within the template, we identify where the content should be injected by adding this attribute. Here, template equals heading tells where the heading should go in this parse rule. Here we've got rich text. Here we have template equals rich text, and it's going to inject the rich text content in place of this placeholder, this default rich text content here. And that makes it very, very easy to create any kind of content you want. Keep in mind, again, if you are using interactions, make sure that they are class triggered interactions and IX2 in order for them to work seamlessly with the rich text repeater. But it was very nice to see that capability. There is a second template as well. This second template here is the render template. Now this is optional. If you have it blank, it'll be totally fine. It'll simply render these items out as HTML. However, in some cases, you may want a wrapper around those items, and you want the wrapper directly around the items, meaning you don't want a slot div in between the outer wrapper and the inner items. So in order to prevent that, the way that we organize it is you have the ability to create any kind of element wrapper you want here. Here it's just a div with some classes. And I can give it an attribute of template equals render. What that will do is say, when you create the items, create them within this wrapper, no divs in between. And that gives you a lot more control for the purposes of JavaScript, for the purposes of interactions targeting, for purposes of custom CSS targeting. It just gives you a lot more control over the final result when you need that. And the end result is pretty simple. It's very clean. One of the things that I really like about this is the fact that it is actually running in the designer. I can see the content in its expanded form as it will appear on the final page when I publish it and view it. And that is very, very convenient. It gives me something a little bit more comfortable to work with than I might get if I were using just straight JavaScript. Code components really help improve the design time experience, and that DX here I'm finding really, really valuable. I think my clients will really, really appreciate that as well. Now, this is a version 1. There's a lot more that's likely to happen. The concept of the rich text repeater is about using rich text as a data source. So there will likely be other versions, other parsing rules, such as grab all the list items, or take each paragraph and item as a separate piece, or pull each of the images or the video references and then use those in some form of processing. There are a lot of different possibilities here. So stay tuned for some interesting examples in the future.